Good evening. Today is the 24th day of December 2015, Christmas Eve. And we are here continuing our explorations in Savitri, Book 2, Canto 3. The glory and the fall of life continues. First, though, a letter from Sri Aurobindo that is one of the ones that has been most important to me because it's very, very exact as to what he is seeking to do with poetry. It's also humorous at times. He begins, I don't think about the technique because technique is no longer in my line. But I see and feel for it when the lines are coming through and afterwards in revision of the work. I don't bother about details while writing because that would only hamper the inspiration. I let it come through without interference, only pausing if there is an obvious inadequacy felt. In which case, I conclude that it is a wrong inspiration or inferior level that has cut across the communication. If the inspiration is the right one, then I have not to bother about the technique then or afterwards. For there comes through the perfect line with the perfect rhythm inextricably intertwined, or rather fused into an inseparable and single unity. If there is anything wrong with the expression that carries with it an imperfection in the rhythm, if there is a flaw in the rhythm, the expression also does not carry its full weight. It is not absolutely inevitable. If, on the other hand, the inspiration is not throughout the right one, then there is an after-examination and recasting of part or whole. The things I lay most stress on then are whether each line in itself is the inevitable thing, not only as a whole, but in each word. Whether there is the right distribution of sentence lengths, parentheses, an immensely important thing in this kind of blank verse, end parentheses. Whether the lines are in their right place, for all the lines may be perfect, but they may not combine perfectly together. Bridges may be needed. Alterations of position so as to create the right development and perspective, etc., etc. Pauses hardly exist in this kind of blank verse. Variations of rhythm, as between the lines, of caesura, of the distribution of long and short, clipped and open syllables, manifold constructions of vowel and consonant sounds, alliteration, assonances, etc., distribution into one line, two line, three or four or five lines, many line sentences, care to make each line tell by itself in its own mass and force, and at the same time form a harmonious whole sentence. These are the important things. But all that is usually taken care of by the inspiration itself. For as I know and have the habit of the technique, the inspiration provides what I want according to standing orders. If there is a defect, I appeal to headquarters till a proper version comes along, or the defect is removed by a word or phrase substitute that flashes with the necessary sound and sense. These things are not done by thinking or seeking for the right thing. The two agents are sight and call. Also, feeling. The solar plexus has to be satisfied. And until it is, revision after revision has to continue. I may add that the technique does not go by any set mental rule, for the object is not perfect technical elegance according to precept, but sound significance filling out the word significance. If that can be done by breaking rules, well, so much the worse for the rule.
This is a thesis in itself.
Absolutely.
Those who do their work in creative writing would do well to read this and
Yes.
much more importantly practice this.
Yes.
And this also shows in one simple letter the difference between human perfection and divine perfection. So human perfection is according to certain preset conditions and rules, and within that rule things have to be accommodated and adjusted. But the divine perfection is a pre-existent truth which seeks to express itself in many forms: poetry, art, literature, science, music, mathematics, sports, cooking. Sri Aurobindo was asked about, cooking by the supramental beings. He said, why not? All activities will take a very different form and shape. So basically, the original creative power is only one. And that must express itself through various instruments in the world. Human beings, as of now, are very imperfect, inadequate instruments. And they have to grow into a greater and greater perfection, into the perfection of the gods. So there is a small story which comes to my mind after reading this, is how Mahabharata was written. There was some time back a question which was a very tricky question: who wrote the Mahabharata? Now, I'm sure most people will answer Vyas, but the right answer is Ganesha. Mahabharata was written literally by Ganesha, but dictated by Vyas. So Vyas received the inspiration, and the inspiration was so fast that he needed someone to write it. And no human being had that caliber or capacity to write it. The inspiration was from a very high source, coming like the Brahmaputra, very wide. So Ganesha agreed. But Ganesha put one condition that, look, I can't pause. I am too quick, too swift. So if you begin to pause, then there'll be a problem. I am going to get up and go away. So Vyas said, okay, one condition of yours, then one condition of mine, that you will write only what you understand. He said, fine, that's fair enough. I am the god of intelligence, buddhi. So it seems that the inspiration as it came has come from time to time in certain very cryptic verses. There are some set of cryptic verses in the Mahabharata that even Ganesha took time to reflect and understand. And that was enough for Vyas to breathe and go further.
Right.
It's a very interesting story about, receiving an inspiration and the instrument which has to express it.
Yes.
And, both have to match each other. It's easy to receive it, not so easy, but still inspiration, doors can be opened, one can receive inspiration. There are people who feel a lot of creative urge inside, but the outer instruments are not equipped enough, and both have to come together. And the mother has used the word double perfection. So Sri Aurobindo, of course, manifested this double perfection, that the inspiration could come at the same time he could sit on the typewriter and type it. Of course, later on it was Nirodha who became the scribe.
Yes, and we'll read many of Nirodha's letters
Yes,
also
yes.
about his work as a scribe.
And technique itself becomes subservient because technique itself evolves as the consciousness evolves. Technique and technology in another field, they both evolve as consciousness evolves.
Does one have to know the technique thoroughly to even begin?
To start with, one knows it, but one should not become a slave to the technique, and that's what Sri Aurobindo is reminding us. All great musicians, for instance, say that first you must become a master in the basic techniques, and then you can break the rules and go beyond it. There are great musicians who have even discovered new ragas, and they knew the classical ragas, and then a time came when they transcended. That leap or jump in time and space into another dimension is where the human consciousness begins to falter. particularly those who are perfectionists in a sense that they become slave of a technique or rules, even for life, even for understanding life. We understand life by a set of rules. But frankly, life is not bound by rules. Our consciousness is bound by rules. So we try to see associations, linkages, cause and effect. And we say this is this, that is that, and this is connected to this through this chain. But it's not true. It's just our limited understanding of life as it is. But in its origin, as we are reading, life is free. It climbs to the peaks, it dips to the nether worlds. And it's one continuous movement, like the oceans stretching itself from the Bay of Bengal right up to the Atlantic. They are not two oceans. But we need to, for our understanding and grasp, because it will be frightening. So we say that there are certain oceans with certain kind of properties, or well, it's the same water basically, but still, there are some differences which demarcate one ocean boundary from another. And what still one national ocean to another nation's ocean. That, of course, is outrightly
As
stupid
we're seeing today.
So we are on page 118.
This now revealed.
This now revealed its antique face of joy. This is what Sri Aurobindo, revealed to us in the previous 4 lines. Yet pure and bright from the timeless was her birth. This is one of the crucial things about life. Life, people have written so much about origin of life. But from a spiritual perspective, origin of life is the divine. Well, for a very simple reason, the divine is very much alive. Perhaps he is the only one who is alive. The mother speaks of that there are living who are dead and there are dead who are alive. And from the supramental point of view, many human beings are as if dead, because they are full of unconsciousness. So origin of life is in the divine, and because of his breath, all things come alive. So that's how it is. Her moods are faces of the infinite. So there are many, many moods of life, and each of them reveals some facet, either in a pure way or distorted way, or it tries to shadow or reflect some aspect of the infinite. But there they are joined in a harmonious unity or a harmonious dance, and here they are seen like a strobe effect broken into different parts. So they appear as disharmonious. If even a dance step, you pick up one step and project it on the screen and leave it, you don't know it's a dance. So some of these gestures may look very, very awkward because you don't know what preceded and what's going to follow. But if you see the whole dance, then it's very harmonious. So our problem is that we are stuck to one mood of life. We think that's all, that's everything, but life has many moods. And beauty and happiness are her native right, and endless bliss is her eternal home. This now revealed its antique face of joy. And I don't know, the word antique immediately gave me, as he said, sound sense filling up the word sense. So it gave me a very interesting feel, the feel of something which is ancient, something which is priceless,
Yes.
and yet something which is lost, like a secret. You discover it. And when you discover it, you discover that it's priceless, a treasure which was hidden. So it's antique face of joy.
Could have used ancient, but it wouldn't work.
It won't be complete.
No.
So its antique face of joy is sudden disclosure to the heart of grief, tempting it to endure and long and hope. This is the nature of life. That's why even though human beings, despite all the suffering, despite all beliefs and disbeliefs, the majority of human beings, they continue to have a will of to live. It's so strongly embedded in nature. Even those who give up their life in a fit of exasperation and despair, even there is a hope, submerged hope, that probably things will be better for us after we are gone. At least they won't be that worse. So this joy of life, this will to life, and this is so important in yoga. Among the many qualities Sri Aurobindo speaks of as important in the yoga, he speaks about joie de vivre, the joy of life. So, yoga is not for those with very serious, glum, and grumpy faces. One must have at least some sense of humor. Actually, even for life, one needs to have sense of humor. Otherwise, one can't survive. And look the expression, tempting it to endure and long and hope. Tempting. Life calls. The feeling that, there is, oh no, there is something round the corner. Things will change, things will improve. Tempting. Even in changing worlds, bereft of peace, in an air racked with sorrow and with fear, and while his feet trod on a soil unsafe, he saw the image of a happier state. Always, because it's hidden in the depths of all that is ever moving, this joy of life. At another place in Savitri, Savitri reveals to death a hidden bliss is at the root of things. So this is the fundamental difference between, among the other differences between Buddhist thought. I won't say the word of Buddha, because how Buddha conceived universe is very different from what later Buddhist thought made it to be. Later Buddhist thought made it to be that the world has sprung out of desire, and Sri Aurobindo would say it has sprung out of delight. And it is this delight going forth in creation, which here we call life. It is that delight which has gone.
But only Ashwapati sees this.
Only Ashwapati.
Yeah.
That's true. He saw the image of a happier state in an architecture of hieratic space, symbolic space, because life creates for itself many time space continuums for its own joy. It creates worlds, each world expressing one aspect of life. What a variety. Circling and mounting towards creation's tops at a blue height which never was too high for warm communion between body and soul. As far as heaven, as near as thought and hope, glimmered the kingdom of a griefless life. So like stars that are above and stardust that falls upon earth, and something glimmers in every movement, even in our thoughts and hopes, something of that touch is felt. So this is the kingdom of the griefless life in its origin. He'll first describe to us, he'll give us a very visual picture of what these worlds are, then the energies, and then more about the state of this world. Above him, in a new celestial vault, not this vault, not this sky, but there are other skies, other time-space continuums, other than the heavens beheld by mortal eyes, as on a fretted ceiling of the gods, an archipelago of laughter and fire, swam stars apart in a rippled sea of sky. This is what is called as, the poet creates. Very often in Sri Aurobindo, I'm sure many of us find this, that imagine a scene which the television would try to capture, and the same scene which comes through poetry, Sri Aurobindo's poetry particularly, and all creative poets, and you will see that what they reveal to us creates an impression in the mind, and the mind automatically conceives an image. Now there is a joy and beauty in this image, and that's why I still remember as a child reading the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. So they created images in my mind, everybody's mind, I had an image of Rama, I had an image of Krishna, of Arjuna. So much later when I saw the actual images projected on the television screen, none of these images have been able to match the image that I have. It's very interesting. So, it's because here this is something artificial. You feed an image from outside. But the beauty of this kind of a creative art, if I may use the word, is that it is creative, and it's like a force which will create images the moment it comes in contact with the mind. Or the mental substance, when it comes in contact with this creative force, this sound and word body, it will create an image. And that image has its own beauty and charm, and it comes very close to a reality which obviously we cannot see with mortal eyes. So look at this image. As on a fretted ceiling of the gods. Fretted like, with
Fretted.
the holes, with,
Like this.
interlacing like this.
Interlacing.
As, and these are all the way it is. Shobinda, Mother has said, nowhere he has used anything for the sake of
No.
picturesqueness. And Shobinda has said the same thing. Everything is described as it is seen. Now we cannot see it. So he is making it easier for us and much better than the television. As on a fretted ceiling of the gods, an archipelago of laughter and fire, a chain of islands, which are floating in the vast ocean, swam stars apart in a rippled sea of sky. So even the sky is not something like, sky which is like an ocean. I mean, it's very interesting the way he describes the skies of the vital world.
And also he started to speak to us about the fall of life.
Yes.
And now we're seeing the glory.
Glory of life. So from the surface, he is going to the depth or to the heights. Absolutely. Towards spirals, magic rings of vivid hue, and gleaming spheres of strange felicity. Look at the image. Floated through distance like a symbol world. On the trouble and the toil they could not share. On the unhappiness they could not aid. So you see them at a distance floating all around, and they are griefless. They don't share our grief. But at the same time, they can't aid this. That will come later. What is that power which can aid? Impervious to life's suffering, struggle, grief, untarnished by its anger, gloom and hate, unmoved, untouched, look down great visioned plains, blissful forever in their timeless right. So he's talking about the countries of the griefless life. Here, of course, life experience is experienced very differently. But there are worlds, kingdoms of life which know not grief. Absorbed in their own beauty and content, of their immortal gladness, they live sure. And these are the kingdoms that have to be brought down here. And there are many people who have tried to conceive of these worlds, greater worlds, where life is a perfect rhythm of the eternal. For instance, Vrindavan. It's a conception that life is a perfect rhythm of the eternal. There are no faltering steps, no breaks, no tiredness, no aching limbs. But here we have all of these, breaking the rhythm of life. Apart in their self-glory, plunged, remote, burning, they swam in a vague, lucent haze. Now look at the picturesqueness of the whole thing. An everlasting refuge of dream light. So that haze is a dream light which contains within itself these worlds. From here it's a refuge. It's like a safety. Not everything can enter it.
And then a nebula.
Yes, a nebula. A nebula of the splendors of the gods, made from the musings of eternity. So nebula is literally a stellar cloud, and all these stars are contained within it as a possibility, and they are born from the nebula. It's literally a glowing cloud out of which now slowly the stars will emerge. So that's how Shobindu describes.
And this is why we have to read Savitri so very slowly.
Yes.
Because each word has been consciously placed in a particular line. Each line consciously aligned with another line, and then a phrase.
Look at this musings of eternity. In spiritual thought, creation is attributed to tapas. So tapas is like the divine broods within itself, upon itself, on all the possibilities that are hidden inside, and they burst forth in a creative splendor. So that is the tapas of the divine. And all tapas in its nature is that. It is a brooding upon it's an energy that broods upon a truth, let's say upon an idea. So if you brood upon an idea that all is the divine, all is in the divine, it becomes a tapas.
Yes.
So tapas is not about the dress you wear and the food you eat and whether you have a kamandalu or a bag or an umbrella or a stick in your hand. If you allow your consciousness to brood upon one object, it's a tapasya. It can be an asuric tapasya. Asuras brood upon their bodies. So at the end they discover possibilities in the body, that it won't die from this, from that, but they miss the higher possibility. So one can brood upon things in the true sense and it becomes a tapasya. Now here Sri Aurobindo is using a word musings of eternity, almost making it something very beautiful. Eternity musing. Musing on what? It's deep thoughted, absorbed upon itself.
Yes. And the very end of Savitri, brooding again.
Brooding again.
She brooded through her stillness on a thought, deep guarded by her mystic folds of light, and in her bosom nursed a greater dawn.
And this has very practical implications. See, like very often we don't even realize where thoughts come from, where feelings come from, where impulses come from, and we are caught in its drift and we are forced, almost compelled to brood upon it. And if we keep brooding upon it, our whole consciousness begins to get tuned to that and built in that image. Brooding has that power. So if you brood on things which by their nature are dark.
Oh, it can be very negative.
Very negative. And if you brood upon things which are beautiful, even in the midst of dark surroundings, like that Antonio Silvio, that story of that man who was in Second World War in the concentration camp. And Sri Aurobindo made him brood upon things which are beautiful. He started seeing beautiful images. He saw Sri Aurobindo. And eventually that brooding has a power that it can free you even from the clutches of the terrible darkness. So it's a great capacity in human beings, but like all great capacities turn to much misuse. Like imagination is a great capacity, but it's slave to certain dark and unconscious forces.
Yes.
So we imagine the worst things. But this is the origin of all creative birth. Almost unbelievable by human faith. So there we are. So you have to brood because human faith cannot even conceive that there is something as beautiful as that. Hardly they seem the stuff of things that are, as through a magic television's glass, outlined to some magnifying inner eye, they shone like images thrown from a far scene, too high and glad for mortal lids to seize. So these are the worlds of griefless life, the kingdoms of griefless life. Yet they can be close to us, but near and real to the longing heart. So this is how the bhakta passionately yearns for the divine. And people may say that, have you ever seen the divine? Have you touched him? This is the gross intelligence.
Yes.
But for the bhakta, they are real. He is real. Real to an inner sense. And therefore he ends up realizing the divine. So this is the whole process, the whole method. But near and real to the longing heart. That's why we long for an ideal, griefless state of things. And to the body's passionate thought and sense are the hidden kingdoms of beatitude. So while they are above, far beyond, they are also near, very near, intimate, even near to the very body. Even the body can feel their thrill and ecstasy. And Sri Aurobindo speaks about that ananda in the very physical, in the nerves, in thought, in feelings. Everywhere these worlds of beatitude are hidden behind.
And Mother has a name, named the flower.
Yes.
Ananda in the physical.
Ananda in the physical. So they are so near. In some close, unattained realm which yet we feel immune from the harsh clutch of death and time, escaping the search of sorrow and desire, in bright, enchanted, safe peripheries, forever wallowing in bliss they lie. You see, is so amazing that even in the harsh clutch of death and time and fate and circumstance, still we can feel the touch of this kingdom and it can change us completely. Look at Sri Aurobindo in the prison. That in the prison, the way he writes, it's amazing. It's like you can't imagine. You would wonder that is he really writing it in the prison, or it's a kind of imaginary story where he's talking about somebody in the prison with so much joy. Actually he makes it so unbelievable and yet so real that in everything he sees something beautiful, something to laugh at, something to enjoy. And he speaks about all the people who were there with him, how happy they were. What he doesn't write is, of course, divine humility. They were so happy because they were so near to the divine. So I'm sure they must have felt somewhere within them that they are close. Their closeness to Sri Aurobindo must have had its impact. And so they are near. So this is Sri Aurobindo's own experience. Immune from the harsh clutch of death and time. He was in the clutch of death and time at that point of escaping the search of sorrow and desire. Now look how he brings these two together. They are close cousins. Wherever there is desire, sorrow is just round the corner. So, escaping the search. Sorrow is searching for what? For happiness. Desire is searching again for a little bit of happiness. In bright, enchanted, safe peripheries, forever wallowing in bliss they lie. This is amazing. Wallowing. Normally the word wallowing is used for wallowing in the mud. Something, things which are
Yes, exactly.
rolling in the mud. Mother speaks about A.B. Purani. And see, it's a, when she speaks about A.B. Purani, every action and word of the mother, if you see in the total context, it has a great meaning. Very casually she has dropped certain hints. Now, as we all know that A.B. Purani ji he followed Sri Aurobindo, that is one part of it. But he had a lot of doubts about the mother. It's a known thing. And he had very serious vital difficulties. There's a whole famous letter of Sri Aurobindo written to him. Be on your guard, be on your guard. 6 times be on your... If you read that letter, you will feel, my God, nobody can do yoga. Be on your guard, be on your guard. Don't allow any kind of lie to come out. That famous letter is basically written to Purani ji.
Yes.
And he just could not come to, have faith in the mother. And yet when he left the body, what did the mother say? She said that his higher intellect has gone and united with Sri Aurobindo. And then he said, I saw Purani rolling in the mud of new creation. That substance, that mud, she describes it as a pinkish clay. So this is grace. Sri Aurobindo is saying, be on your guard, be on your guard. And the Divine Mother is saying, grace, 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 grace. Wallowing in the mud of new creation. So what it would be, wallowing in bliss. Only a flickering zest they left behind, or the fierce lust that brings a dead fatigue.
Where are we?
Oh, sorry.
I think you got a page.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
In dream and trance and
yes.
muse.
That's what I said, this cannot go with it. Forever wallowing in bliss they lie. That was the other wallowing. So got connected through the common word. In dream and trance and muse before our eyes. Across a subtle vision's inner field, wide rapturous landscapes fleeting from the sight. Even the landscapes were like that. They come, show a while, and they escape your sight, leaving behind us a trail of joy and beauty, glimpsed for a moment, and now it goes. What a beautiful...
But it's across the subtle visions.
Obviously.
Yes.
Their matter is plastic to the
Yes.
To the force and consciousness. The figures of the perfect kingdom pass, and behind them leave a shining memories trail. Yeah, these worlds, if they are ever witnessed by an inner sense, either in vision or in dream,
Yes.
they are remembered forever. Mother speaks about at one point, just before Auroville comes into existence or around that time, she says, all the time I am seeing landscapes, mountains, rivers, buildings, everything of the new creation which is ready. It just has to come down. So, and behind them leave a shining memories trail, imagined scenes or great eternal worlds. Dream caught or sensed, they touch our hearts with their depths. So they come to awaken us. Here I am, look at this, what a glimpse and glory. Unreal seeming, yet more real than life, because that is the origin. And yet to our dull, drab sense, it seems unreal. Like, on another note, in the Indian Air Force, earlier days, when I had joined, there were few things which were regarded as part of your life. When you joined as an officer, you must drink, you must smoke, and you must be a non-vegetarian. So I was none of these. So they used to say, what man, you are not even alive. This is life. Now, this is life. When you feel life like that with the very gross senses, you lose the ability to feel it with the subtle senses. Whereas that is more real. But to a person who is completely in the gross world, of course, things have changed over the decades. I have seen, and this is a very clear sign that the new world is active. Now it's the other way around. Now hardly people smoke, drink. A lot of people have turned, of course, they have swung to the other extreme of being a vegan, with this, which is truly an extremism of thought. But nevertheless, the fact is that to feel these things, we have to feel them through a subtle sense. And when we experience them, they are very, very real and concrete. But if our senses are very gross, then they appear as dreams and imaginations and, maybe half crazy things. Unreal seeming, Sri Aurobindo is, again. Normally you say, seeming like real. Look how Sri Aurobindo plays with words. He is really like someone playing with words. He literally plays with them. Look how he picks up a word and places. We were reading that the right word. Unreal seeming. These words which seem unreal.
And then the next line.
Yet more real than life. Happier than happiness. Truer than things true. So, what a way he puts us in touch with what these worlds are like. Happier than happiness. Whatever we can conceive of as happiness. Whatever we can conceive of as truth and true. They are truer than that. They are happier than that. So it goes beyond all our conceptions and experiencing ability. Our senses. If dreams these were or captured images, this Sri Aurobindo mentions even in aphorism. A scientist came and told me that these are hallucinations. And the mother has given a commentary on this, that, they would say these are after images and these are nothing but imaginations which somebody sees projected outside. And Sri Aurobindo and the mother have given very interesting reply to it. At one place with regard to history, with regard to the Bhagavad, Puranas and these legends which appear like imaginations. So the mother says something very interesting, that these rishis were seers who saw things with a subtle vision. But to a person who is not initiated, they would appear as mere imaginations. And yet Sri Aurobindo says, then thank God for these hallucinations and these imaginations, because they save the world alive. Otherwise, imagine what life would be. So here he says, if dreams these were or captured images, dreams truth made false earth's vain realities. In two lines he has answered this whole thing that there is about, great legends, whether the Trojan, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad, did they exist or not? Well, I say very often that, at least in the Indian context, it's so true. When people question about Mahabharata and Ramayana, how could the monkey speak and stuff like that. So there are many ways of explaining this, but I have very simple logic to it. look, we have forgotten all about history. I have forgotten at least what I read as a child and march of civilization. Some names are left, some shining stars, and people know that, okay, so and so had conquered and then went away. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But over tens of thousands of years, Ramayana and the Mahabharata have endured in the human consciousness and continue to inspire. Now, what is this kind of a creation? Is it dream? Is it real? Is it imagination? Is it concrete? Its impact is much more concrete on the human consciousness than the so-called dull, drab realities of earthly life. Christ continues to inspire from the cross, as Shubindu said. So many persons, for them it's so real to hold a cross and trust that all that is evil and dark will stay away. And it's very real. People would say it's imagination. Oh, how can this happen? All of this is mere imagination. But it's not true. That's so real and concrete. So here Shubindu is taking a dig. Dreams truth. Look at dreams truth. Made false earth's vain realities. At once there are suggestions of layers of realities. So earth's realities are so vain, so drab, so dull. And if you once experience it, then all this will appear as vain. In a swift eternal moment fixed there live, or ever recalled come back to longing eyes, calm heavens of imperishable light. Illumined continents of violet peace, oceans and rivers of the mirth of God, and griefless countries under purple suns.
This is a very interesting two lines here, the violet and the purple.
Yes.
Sri Aurobindo was asked about this, and he says, well, Virgil saw it, and I'm taking it sort of from Virgil, that there were purple suns.
Yes,
but he had seen them.
Yes. Beautiful. That these are countries and
Griefless
continents
countries.
and earth.
Yeah.
And they may, and he has answered the objection also that people may raise, that all this is very fine, but are you sure they are real? He would say more real than earth's vain realities.
Yes.
And because they are there, man's heart can hope and endure and dare the great adventure of consciousness and joy.